after the interlude takes place and Pete completes
the act
on her stomach. This is graphic, but this is what it is. This is where we're at. He grabs a towel and he tosses it to her and says, "You can clean that up." And that, I think, was the insult that broke her.
When you go into his room on your own and have sex with a man who is a stranger to you, expect no better.
Exactly.
Expect no better. And that applies to her and all women.
All right, well, that was Megyn Kelly and her guest talking about the sexual assault allegations that were filed against, or I should say, the sexual assault allegations from a woman that's being referred to as Jane Doe against Pete Hegseth, who Donald Trump has tapped as his defense secretary. Now, I don't think it's helpful for Megyn Kelly to say things like that because it seems as though you're blaming women for the behavior of men as if men have absolutely no control over their own behavior. But I want to move on to talk a little bit about how Pete Hegseth is now referring to the rape allegation as a smear. And before we get to the clip where he says that, let's just quickly review a few of the details. So the incident happened back in October of 2017 at a Republican women's conference in Monterey, California. Now, Jane Doe says that her first memory of being in a hotel room was when she was on the bed or a couch and Hegseth was over her. She said that his dog tags were hovering over her face and that he was bare-chested. She told police he ejaculated onto her stomach before throwing her a towel and asking, "Are you okay?" The woman said she does not remember how she got back to her room. Her husband was worried about her because she hadn't returned to the room until about 4 a.m. And about 4 days later, she went to the hospital, had a rape kit taken, and the prosecutors never filed any charges. We don't understand why. We don't know what their reasoning was behind it. And in the end, there was some sort of financial settlement involved. And I want to be abundantly clear that there has never been any adjudication of the allegations against him because there was never a trial, prosecutors never pursued it. And so whenever you hear him say, or anyone supporting Hegseth say, that he was cleared of any wrongdoing, that's not truthful, that is dishonest, that is not the case.
Yeah, so look, I have no idea what happened that night.
Right.
And I don't know that anyone outside of those two does. And they might even have different recollections of it. But yes, they did not press charges. Now, but when I look at it, as we discussed before, you look at the totality of the circumstances. For example, remember the absurd charges against Aziz Ansari? Now, those were not legal charges, but they were made public in some article against him. And number one, you look at the content of it, you're like, well, that's not a thing. Doesn't seem to have done anything wrong, even based on your allegations. And number two, he has no prior history of doing anything like that, right? Then you look at Hegseth, and oh my God, the history is stacked with being disrespectful to women, being out of control drunk. It's on and on and on, right? Look, you party, I don't give a damn about your parties, right? If you have a significant drinking problem, as tons of people have attested to at work, then it's a problem if you're gonna be Secretary of Defense. Like most of the women you work with tell the press he's dangerous, you got a problem, okay? Now, but we've gone over that. To me, the Megyn Kelly thing, and by the way, we're gonna get to how he's probably gonna be Secretary of Defense. I mean, they're rallying massively to him. But the Megyn Kelly thing actually really bothers me. That kind of logic of, well, you wound up in his room, so I guess, I mean, it seems like, maybe she's not saying it, but it seems like she's saying, then you had it coming. No, you didn't have it coming. No, like don't go into guys' rooms if you're not sure. I get that, be cautious, I get that. But once a guy is in a room alone with a girl, he does not have carte blanche. And that kind of idea, it bothers me.
Yeah, because it's blaming the woman for the behavior of the man, assuming the allegations of him mistreating her or potentially raping her are true, right? And so I hate that as well. At the same time, as a woman myself, obviously, you know how vulnerable you can be. And so you always have to take additional precautions just to protect yourself. But that doesn't mean that the onus should be on the woman when it comes to the bad behavior that's being carried out by the man.
So number one, that's just as a matter of justice, that's obviously true. But secondly, it leads to a disastrous result if you have that mindset set in, right? So we left, so back in the day we were on Current TV, right? And so when Al Jazeera America bought them, we left. And there was many different reasons we left, but one of them was, we had a coworker and she was gonna go do a meeting with one of their executives, and she was the head of social media, so she was fairly high up at Current TV. And they said, oh, you have to bring a male with you to have coffee at Starbucks with this executive. And we were like, wait, what? Here in America, she has to bring a male with her? Why? Because the assumption is if a man and a woman are alone together, well, obviously the man's gonna rape her or something.
That's crazy.
Okay, like what? Like, no, I don't want to work with someone like that. And I'm not trying to, look, I'm sure that different Al Jazeera branches are different and their executives are different, et cetera. But that happened with that particular individual, and it was a massive turnoff for me, because we have to be able to be in the same room together without assuming that the man's going to be a monster.
Yeah, and I just think, look, it's kind of unfair to men in general, right? Because it's assuming that men are like these, they're all predators, and the second they get you in a room alone in the middle of the night, they're gonna do bad things to you. But anyway, look, I don't wanna hyper focus on that because there are way more important updates to this story, including basically what's happening in the media in trying to kind of launder the image and reputation of Pete Hegseth. Certainly Sean Hannity is helping him with that. But Hegseth himself is now calling allegations against him smears. So let's take a look at that.
Pete has faced, well, the predictable slew of allegations about pretty much everything, a personal relationship in which he was fully investigated, exonerated, the media mob doing what they predictably do. You had a consensual relationship. It was investigated. You were fully exonerated.
Okay, so again, he was never fully exonerated. That is not true. And so I want to go to the final video here. Hegseth kind of attempts to defend himself against these allegations. Let's take a look.
I also want an opportunity here to clarify comments that have been misconstrued that I somehow don't support women in the military. Some of our greatest warriors, our best warriors out there are women who serve, raise their right hand to defend this country and love our nation, want to defend that flag, and they do it every single day around the globe. So I'm not presuming anything, but after President Trump asked me to be his Secretary of Defense, should I get the opportunity to do that, I look forward to being a secretary for all our warriors, men and women.
So in that clip, he's basically defending himself and kind of backtracking on what he had said previously, backpedaling on what he had said previously about women in the military. Yeah. So
there's two things that are frustrating about this. So these are the old school lies of right-wing media, right? Fully exonerated, and it was consensual. Those things were not concluded. It's totally fair to say, hey, they didn't charge you, and that's good evidence on your side. That's fair. But saying that, oh yeah, they looked into it and said you were definitely not guilty, that just didn't happen. Oh, they concluded it was consensual, that didn't happen. And here Hegseth on his own defense is like, oh my God, these people saying that I am against women in combat, it's ridiculous. It's not ridiculous. You wrote down that you were against women in combat.
Right, exactly.
Right, they at least have the decency to be honest about it and say, yeah, I used to believe that, but now that Joni Ernst and a couple of other Republican female senators, who by the way, Joni Ernst is also a veteran, are going to vote on me, I've changed my position. And so I'm now going to be in favor of it to get nominated. And by the way, after I'm confirmed, I might change my position back.
Yeah.
Okay, that would be an honest way of handling it, but they're never gonna be like that.
So speaking of the confirmation process and Senator Joni Ernst, I'm gonna suspect that there was a lot of pressure for her to come out and publicly support Pete Hegseth.
You don't have to suspect it because
it's definitely true.
Yeah, it's now reported that there was overwhelming pressure on her.
Yes, because she was on the short list to essentially replace Hegseth if he became too much of an issue and it was becoming clear that he would not be confirmed through the confirmation process. And so last week, Ernst was refusing to state whether she would support him or not. But now all of a sudden, as a veteran, as an advocate for survivors of sexual assault in the military, she has decided to come forward and say publicly that she does plan to vote in favor of his confirmation. And that doesn't come out of nowhere. That definitely is the result of a public pressure campaign to do so. To
me, the interesting part, Anna, is that they circled the wagons. So Matt Gaetz got thrown under the bus exactly as we said he would,
he did,
right?
Yeah.
I said he would be a sacrificial lamb, and he was the scapegoat, and that would allow them to circle the wagons on everyone else. That's exactly what happened, right? So now they circle the wagons not just on Hegseth, but on Tulsi Gabbard and Kash Patel. And they're going around and doing both things. Now, look, I have mixed feelings about that because those are the three that I want least to be confirmed. I think all three of those folks are massive problems, in my opinion. But I get what the Trump team is doing. They're putting maximum political pressure, and then the base is speaking out. The base, I think, is wrong. Hegseth is a neocon, in my opinion.
He is a neocon, yes.
Based on his writings and based on everything he said. So they don't realize that they're backing the wrong guy, but they are backing him, and they are putting a lot of pressure on her and saying, hey, we're your voters. And we're speaking out. They have every right to do that. And if I was advising Bernie Sanders and he put in someone that I thought was going to be an excellent Secretary of Defense and was right, and I would do the same thing, right? I would put maximum pressure to get the people that we want through. Now, I just think they have the wrong guy, and both on, like, his past indiscretions are so hard to tell, but there's a mountain of evidence, circumstantial evidence around him.
Yeah.
But more importantly, I can't stand that he's a neocon and said kill all Muslims and etc.
I don't like neocons. Like if there's any group of people who I dislike the most, it's neoconservatives, okay? The Bush era was when I became politicized, and I can't stand those guys. I think they've caused a tremendous amount of damage in the Middle East, certainly, and in our own country. And so that's where I stand on neoconservatism. But in regard to all of the various allegations floating around in regard to Pete Hegseth, to me, what persuaded me about his character and not seeing him as someone who has good character was the letter or the email that his own mother wrote to him. To me, a mother writing something like that to her own son, that means something. And so his disrespect and mistreatment of women is a problem. And so if his mom is saying that to him, not to his face, but obviously in the form of an email, where there's smoke, there's very likely fire here.
Yeah, and look, people overuse that statement, but in this case, it's not a brush fire, it's an inferno.
Right.
It's including his mom. So he's obviously, at a minimum, in the past, had a massive problem with dealing with women, right? But to me, the reason why it's more important and relevant in this case is because as Secretary of Defense, he has to oversee hundreds of thousands of women, both in the military and the Pentagon and so many other things. And is he going to be fair to them, or is he going to do like he did when he ran a veterans organization and separated them into, was it doable and not doable? Oh no, party girls and non-party girls, okay? And so if you're separating out our service members into party girls that you want to maybe try to have sex with and non-party girls, that's a disgusting, ridiculous way to go. And by the way, is anybody gonna, here, I'll predict ahead of time, no one will bring up in the confirmation hearings, hey, you wrote in your book that we should use Israel to go after domestic enemies here in America. What did you mean, right?
Yeah, that's
so that is very troubling, whether you're left wing or right wing. And of course it won't get brought up because a bunch of crooks there all take AIPAC money, and so they're gonna be like, oh, that's the best part about it.
You're gonna use a foreign country to go after American patriots? Like, come on.
And you're gonna be the Secretary of Defense? I don't think so. So he's a terrible pick in every way, but at this point, I don't think MAGA can see straight, and I think they're gonna push him through. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.